Ooh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly.
Good afternoon, Sharon. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Mark Silverman?
I'm doing well. We have a lengthy list for Over the Rainbow today. It's
yeah, but it's diverse.
It's
diverse.
You took the word right out of my mouth. I was going to say you took the words right out of my mouth, but diverse is only one word, so that's the only word.
Right.
You took out of my mouth.
We've got a little sports, and we've got a little, we've got sports, we've got children's programming, we've got entertainment. We should get rolling. We start with former baseball player Sal Bando, pitcher for the Oakland A's.
Wait a second. Isn't it redundant to say former baseball player? Because any player that we feature,
I know you're going to say because he died, but
would be by definition former.
But he retired first.
Retired baseball player is more accurate.
Okay. Well, isn't somebody who retired former?
Well, I don't know.
It's semantics, Mark.
Baseball player is who he is. Is he always a baseball player? He retired from the game, but if he had a career of as long as successful as he did, is he ever not a baseball player just because he's not playing the game? He might be retired, but he's still a baseball player. Is Barry Bonds a baseball player? Is Barry Bonds a baseball player?
Yes.
Is Derek Jeter a baseball player?
Yes.
They're retired, but they're still baseball players. They're not former baseball players.
But you would say former Yankee.
A former Yankee.
Okay. All right. I will go with that. He is a former Oakland Athletic and Brewer. He was an all-star third baseman. He hit .254 with 242 homers and 1,039 RBIs. That's a lot of RBIs.
I did not realize. I
actually did not know he played for the Brewers. I thought he was always in athletics, so that was news.
No, he was not an early, not one of the first free agents, but Charlie Finley was such a tightwad. He lost almost. He had a team that won 3 World Series in a row.
I know.
Ida Blues, Reggie Jackson. The names are legendary.
Catfish Hunter. Yeah, we stole them all.
And they all left as free agents. Exactly.
Right.
I don't think he paid.
Oh, okay. Anything. Right. And the very first free agent, George Steinbrenner, created free agency by finding a loophole in Catfish Hunter's contract, and that was the beginning of free agency.
Catfish Hunter, I thought Andy Messersmith preceded him. Catfish Hunter was not the first.
Yes, he was. I've read it several times. I'll go find an article for you. I didn't look it up this time, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. But just because it's you, I'll go find the information. That George Steinbrenner, because they found a loophole in Catfish Hunter's contract that he was able to negotiate to get Catfish.
I do remember that.
And that was the beginning of free agency. But yeah, I had always thought for some reason that he was with the Athletics, and then in the research it said that he he spent his last 5 seasons with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Right, and then he went on to be their general manager. So
correct.
If he were to go in the Hall of Fame, one might argue he would have gone in wearing a Brewers cap. But I'm thinking since the majority of his success was with the A's.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I didn't realize. I mean, I knew he was a good player, a key player on that team. And he was a starting third baseman. But I didn't realize that he ranked among the top when he retired and became a former baseball player. He ranked in the top 5 in like home runs and RBI and all sorts.
When I find a player like that who consistently beats my Yankees, I'm like, hey, get out of there, come over here, you're wearing the wrong uniform.
The other thing, I mean, part of what worked against him, if you will, I mean, he was the captain of the A's, but he was on a team with Reggie Jackson, with Vida Blue, even Gene Tennis, who came out of nowhere to hit a whole bunch of postseason home runs, was almost a bigger name, And then in terms of third baseman, Brooks Robinson was playing for Baltimore at the same time, and there was nobody better at third base than Brooks Robinson.
Yeah, and don't forget the Yankees' Greg Nettles.
I don't know that Nettles was ever like the defensive third baseman that Brooks Robinson.
Oh my God, he was! Oh my God, he was with the way that he handled that hot corner.
But
absolutely, yeah.
But Sal Bando was a much more dominant player historically.
He got swallowed up by the bigger names. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He was a multi sports star. He played, and I don't think that as common today as it was in the 50s and 60s. Where you played the sport each season. You played football, you played basketball.
Right. I mean, even I just finished reading Derek Jeter, one of Derek Jeter's books from when he was a Rookie of the Year. Read baseball. He also played basketball. He played soccer.
Yeah.
They had the Bo Jackson, right, and the Neon Dion, who were, football, baseball guys, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they played professional in both. Not only did they play professional in both sports, if I remember, Deion Sanders, I believe, played football on Sundays and baseball during the week. I don't know that Bo Jackson did.
There was one day where he was in a game for the football, and then he was running late for the game at Yankee Stadium, and he actually flew in on a helicopter and landed on the field.
Bo Jackson, boy, his body betrayed
Bo Jackson,
him, he was.
Bo Jackson was a big Don Mattingly fan, and he's the one that named him Donnie Baseball.
He was.
That was sad. Like, yeah, that was the way it was said. The way his career was cut short. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there were a lot of very, very good players on that athletics team. So
he was key on both. He's in Milwaukee's Hall of Fame or Wall of Fame. He's in the Athletics Hall of Fame. Just recently, as a matter of fact, he was just inducted into the Athletics Hall of Fame last year.
There you go. All right.
Overdue, if you ask me.
All right.
Overdue.
So we move on to Gary Peters, which was a name I wasn't aware of, but he, was one of those names, I guess, that we talk about that should be better known. 1963 American League Rookie of the Year for the Chicago White Sox. A left-handed pitcher, which was very important in those days, and I think even more important these days. Gary All-Star roster in 64 and 67. Finished in the top 10 of the most valuable thing in 1963-64, and he was named to the American League '67. I mean, this guy, I didn't see him play, obviously, but I mean, those we were three.
Why not? He
so,
played until
but
73.
he has like an outstanding.
I mean, you might have seen him
Well,
play.
that's
He
true.
played until 73.
Yeah. I didn't, you know what? My eyes were.
When did you go to your
Yankees,
first game?
so,
How old were you when you went to your first game?
65. 65. Yeah.
Oh, you beat me by a lot. I didn't go till 68.
Yeah. Oh no, Dad used to take us all the time. Hmm.
I took my kids every
Yeah.
year.
I actually, you know, I mean, some of my Yankee sites, you know, they've asked, you know, when do you remember your first game? My first game was on Channel 11, and I was watching Mickey Mantle's retirement game with Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was Mickey Mantle.
That was like
Day, and I
68.
remember him. I thought that
Mantle
was
retired in
65.
68, I think.
No, this was just his retirement. It wasn't that he died.
Yeah, no, but he retired in 1968, I think.
I thought it was 65.
No, I don't think so.
That's my first memory of it is Mickey Mantle Day. I remember it was in black and white, and you know, and he retired. But Gary Peters played during a time. Let's see, he was more known as that bench player and that, you know, that defensive guy. But he had accolades at hitting too. The one thing that I took from the article was he played during a time that was before the DH, and it says, and this is part of the quote, on May 5th, 1968, he had a grand slam in Comiskey Park, helping the White Sox to a 5-1 victory over my Yankees. How dare he? But that's pretty much all I have on.
Oh, no, he was way more impressive than I could have imagined. He not only was Rookie of the Year in his very first full season. I know.
Yeah.
That's like that's calling a dead player a former. Because you could only be Rookie of the Year in your first full season. I once got people pissed off because, about as somebody who won Rookie of the Year. I said, if he was so good, how come he only won it once? But it really ticked people off.
Buddy.
But
it's so funny.
He wasn't just Rookie of the Year. He led the American League in earned run average in his rookie season.
Oh, yeah.
He led the White Sox in wins.
Yeah, and he was also in the voting. He finished in the top 10 for most valuable player that year.
Yeah. So he had several years where he was just, he talked about that. He had a bad back in his third year, and I'm guessing that slowed his career somewhat, but he went on to be on the All-Star team again the next year and played another 6 or 7 years.
Just like Mickey Mantle, who played with broken bones and sprains and whatnot. I mean, now you break a pinky and you're on the IL list. So,
but he had 19 home runs as a pitcher. He had that grand slam you talked about. He had a game-winning pinch hit home run. He was awesome as a pinch hitter and even as a pinch runner. And that's a rare bird these days. Well, now, of course, with
absolutely, it's almost impossible.
The non-bird.
Well, they are. I mean, they're bringing the DH in, I think, this coming year for the National League.
Oh no, this past season had the DH.
They did?
Yeah.
The National League?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought that was coming this year. I'm not real happy with some of the changes coming this year. But that's for another day.
They expanded the base, the size of the base. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Pitch clock.
They're limiting. I don't mind the clock, but they're limiting like how many times a pitcher can throw over to first base.
That's strange. Last year or 2 years ago, they already limited. 2 or 3 years ago, relief pitcher has to face at least 3 batters.
Right, I don't like that either.
There's certain exceptions.
Yeah,
but you can't just keep going righty lefty.
No, it takes strategy away. And I don't like the fact that now they're saying that you can only throw over to the base 3 times.
Yeah,
Because
I
then,
think.
yeah, I don't like that. It's detrimental.
Yeah.
But anyway, so anything else?
And they
on,
also, but probably the major change is they limited the shift. Before the pitch,
yes.
the infield is 2 on either side of second base, and they
are still allowed to shift, but it's limited, and they must have
until the pitch is thrown. They have to be on. There has to be 2 on each side of the second base.
Right, and they have to have feet on the field. Like the outfielders must have feet on the field, but they are allowed to shift, but they limited how much that they can shift. But anything else on Gary Peters?
You know, in a way, both Gary Peters and Sal Bando are throwbacks to different kind of players.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
We talked about Bando playing multiple sports. We talked about Peters as a pitcher being able to hit. You know, and I think even now to an extent, when you got a kid coming up who's a great pitcher, but, you know, I mean, we're talking about when he's 10, 12, 13, 15, you know, playing in Little League and you know, the more advanced traveling teams. I'm guessing that the best pitcher is often the best hitter still into their early teens. It's not until you get to probably college or the minor leagues that the pitchers forget how to hit. Or so little focus placed on it. But these guys are throwbacks to a different era of the game. I
agree.
That's what I take away from this.
I agree with you 100%.
Where does that move us now?
It moves us on to Lloyd Morrisett. He was 93 years old. That's a pretty good life. Co-creator of the entertaining and educational children's TV series Sesame Street. Did you ever get to go to Sesame Street? I didn't.
You know, I really didn't. I mean, I know I've seen.
You know why?
Of it.
Yeah, the thing is that when Sesame Street, so like we grew up with Captain Kangaroo, and we grew up with Romper Room.
You know what time it is? It's time for me to see the friends at home in the magic mirror. Romper Bumper, Stomper Boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, tell me today, did all my friends have fun at play? All my friends had fun today. I see David's having a special day today, and I see Rick and Mark and Sharon.
And by the time Sesame Street came around, we were like around 13. So I don't think that we were anxious to get. Yeah, I don't think we were all that anxious to get to Sesame Street. We were more engaged with Palisade Park, I think. But it says here he co-created Sesame Street. He worked with Joan Gans Cooney and a developmental psychologist whose name was Gerald Lesser, or it might still be. And they created a whole new approach to children television.
Might still be.
Yeah, because I don't know if he's dead or not.
Okay.
So yes, that was I'm glad you caught that. Yeah, and teaching children under the age of 5. They took kind of like puppeteering, but they went with the new Jim Henson's Muppets, and they made the Muppets teachers. So the show engaged the children in learning math and reading and even Spanish, and they also took like socialization, like how to socialize with cultures and people, and understanding. Like with the Spanish, they would talk about foods and this, and they would have some Muppet that speaks Spanish, talk about what they eat at his house. They even have a Muppet now that's gay, and they have a Muppet that's in a wheelchair. So they had their first black Muppet. So they just continually grow and teach. And it was, I had known about this because, of course I looked into it as a grade school teacher, but wonderful stuff. And, Kermit the Frog, and
who the very first Muppet was? The absolute very first Muppet.
It was Kermit. It was Kermit. No. It was Jim Henson. I thought it was Kermit, and Jim Henson himself did the voice for it.
Well, yes, he did. But it was Catfish Hunter.
It was who?
Catfish Hunter. They found a loophole in his clause and that allowed him to be a Muppet.
You're bad. So anyway, this show.
I was right, by the way. Catfish Hunter was the very first free agent ever.
You just said Catfish Hunter was the first free agent ever. Yes, that's what I said.
I was right.
How are you right? I'm the one that said it.
Because Catfish Hunter was the first free agent.
So I was right.
Yes, we were both right.
How were you right when you said it was Ken Holtzman?
Because I said it was Andy Messerschmidt.
Oh, right. Okay.
So you were wrong.
But if it was
right,
all right. If you're wrong, still, I was the one.
Right. If you're wrong, they have to be right.
But I was the one who was right about Catfish Hunter, and you were wrong.
I didn't say Ken Holtzman. I'm taking a win.
You said Andy Messerschmidt.
My record is unblemished.
No, you're wrong. I invite our listeners to write in.
I did not say Ken Holtzman, so you were mistaken.
You said Andy Messerschmidt. That's not Catfish Hunter.
Spell Andy Messerschmidt.
Yes, I can.
Oh yeah, ANDYC.
Messerschmidt. Oh, stop. So, anyway, so back to Sesame Street. It was established under the name the Children's Television Network. And the show now reaches over 120 million children.
You mean it was on more than Channel 13?
Yeah, well, you have all those other Channel 21 and, all those different ones going into different countries. But, it was great. They taught counting with a Muppet named the Count that looked like Count Dracula. Mm-hmm. And he taught children, what else? Counting. But not just in English, but in Spanish, too.
Oh, hatsy-tatsy, my first day on the job as elevator operator. I cannot wait to take someone upstairs on the elevator so I can count the numbers on the different floors. Aha, here comes someone now.
Oh, hi there. Could you take me up to the... Count, is it you?
Yes.
Well, what are you doing here?
I am the new elevator operator. I got the job this morning.
Wonderful.
Yes, and I'm going to love it because I get to count the floors.
Oh, well, listen, could you take me up to the 7th floor?
At last. Walk this way.
Okay. Into the elevator.
Watch your step, please, going up.
Mm-hmm.
Starting at 1 and going up. That's 2 floors. 3 floors. 4 floors. 5 floors. 6 floors. 7 floors. 8 floors.
Wait a second, Count. I wanted to get off on the 7th floor.
That's 10 floors. I love it.
Count, I wanted to get off on the 7th floor.
I'm sorry, Kermit.
And they also did basic addition problems with both Cookie Monster and the Count. So
if the Count teaches counting, what is it that Oscar the Grouch and Kermit the Frog?
I'm not sure. Cleanliness. How important it was to be clean. I'm not sure, but Sesame Street is now shown in more than 150 countries. It's won 260 Emmys, 11 Grammys, and in 2019 received the Kennedy Center Honor for Lifetime Artistic Achievement, which is the first time. Let me finish. Which is the first time. Let me finish. which is the first time a television program got the award, and that is a far cry from what we grew up on with Captain Kangaroo in the Romper Room.
Here's how you know what a cultural touchstone Sesame Street was.
Go for it.
Oscar the Grouch and Cookie Monster and all the Bert and Ernie.
Mhm.
I mean, you could just name. As a matter of fact, I have to. You know what? I'm not 100% sure that Kermit the Frog. I don't think Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy were on Sesame Street. I think they were on the Evening Muppet Show. I don't think they were Sesame Street characters. But Big Bird, you can go through the list of Sesame Street characters, and everybody knows them. Not only that, but for instance, Bert and Ernie. You know how Bert and Ernie got their name?
Absolutely.
How did Bert and Ernie get their name?
You tell us. 'Cause I'm looking at something. No, seriously.
It was from It's a Wonderful Life. It was the cop and the cab driver and the Jimmy Stewart. It's a Wonderful Life movie with Bert and Ernie.
Right.
So, but even though we arguably never saw an entire episode of Sesame Street, we know who all those.
All right. So I did look up. I was looking up when you asked that question. I was looking up Kermit the Frog, and he was on Sesame. He was not exclusive to Sesame Street.
Right. Was Miss Piggy on
But
Sesame
he
Street?
was on. He was on it. It says he was the know-it-all frog, but he was not exclusive to Sesame Street.
How about Miss Piggy? Was Miss Piggy on Sesame Street?
I'm not sure. It shows Kermit. Let me look up Piggy. Keep telling us about the other thing. Let's see.
Oh no, we can. While you look that up, we can move on. I think we've covered.
Okay.
Which brings us. Oh, what?
Nope, she has never. Miss Piggy. Well, Kermit the Frog is known for his appearances on Sesame Street. Miss Piggy has never appeared on Sesame Street.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We cleared that up.
So
we're
you
moving
got it from Sesame Street. This
Yes.
where else do you go? But the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show. You know, the thing is, so this guy Sal Piro was 72 years old, and I didn't know his name. I mean, you know, it turns out he was the president of the Rocky Horror Picture Show fan club. How many times have you seen that? I mean, if you go to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show, you got to go more than once.
Oh, probably less than 100.
All right.
Maybe.
All right, we'd like to welcome everyone here to the Rocky Horror Picture Show here at the 8th Street Playhouse. And all of our regulars would like to wish a warm welcome to all you virgins. Now, we have some special occasions tonight. Tonight is Gail's birthday. And we have a special button for a special young lady. Tonight is Christine's 150th time. Now, we have a special warning from the management tonight. No lit candles and no throwing of food at the screen, understand?
Get on with the show!
Hey, this is the fucking show, buddy, and if you don't like it, you go see the movie in Staten Island. Boy, is he in for a surprise tonight.
I'm just
100
gonna.
times. Usually 100 times. It might have been a little bit more, might have been a little bit less, but it's close
Right.
enough. I'm not sure.
Well, you know, it all started at the Waverly Theater. So, you know, the first thing that when you take somebody to the theater, the first thing your good friend will ask you is if you've ever seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And that's because if you haven't, you are considered a Rocky Horror Picture Show virgin. And what they make you do is they invite you up in front of the theater. All the virgins have to stand up in front of the theater and then admit that they've never seen it and get doused. But if you have seen it, you know, you are afforded the the shameful, of the shame of not having seen it before.
Well,
the first time when you're there, you should be assured to not sit up front.
I
Don't
was
sit up
early
front.
enough that they did not have that virgin ritual yet, and
They didn't throw things at you.
oh no, they threw things in the stern.
The
But
war,
not
yeah,
there
like
was
when
no introduction
they
of virgin.
got out of the car. When they got out of the car and they knocked on the door and it was raining, you had people in the back with water guns.
Right.
And they made it rain on you.
But nobody stood up. They didn't ask anybody here for the first time or anything like that.
Right.
But the guys I went with had been, so we were in the back row, so we could cheer for the line in the back.
Safe, good job. Yeah, so I remember I had sat in the middle of the theater and I got hit in the head with it was actually a crooked queen. It was the queen of spades or something, and it hit me in the head and I was like, ow, and I looked at it and it was this crooked card. It was very funny. So
the lines that the audience, the rituals,
around the corner,
first
like
year
down the block and around the corner lines. Yeah.
But for the for the first year or two, it was the audience shouting out the lines. The
Janet, you had to yell Janet.
Yeah, right. And damn it.
Damn it, Janet.
The one I saw it in the car. I saw it last time I saw it was about 5, 6, or maybe about 7 years ago for Halloween at a drive-in out here. So I'm just sitting with my friend with other in our car, and I'm still reflexively making the call outs. Even and you could kind of hear it from the other cars.
Yeah, but you couldn't get any. I mean, were they throwing things at the screen instead of at you?
Not really, no.
Yeah, it would have been funny if you would have had to use your windshield wipers.
I think the most brilliant line, the most brilliant ad lib from the audience that I heard, because by the way, one of the things that to me is remarkable about the cast of Rocky Horror is how many stars.
Oh yeah.
Who weren't yet. Susan Sarandon.
Landon. Yeah. And the thing is, she embraces that. I love that about her. She embraces that.
But they also had this this singer nobody had yet heard of.
Meatloaf. He was an actual, but I didn't like that part where he was sort of an actual meatloaf.
Well, but that was the line. The line was incredible when they pulled the tablecloth and then somebody shouted out, "Meatloaf again!" The character name was Eddie, but to shout out from the commercial line, I think it was Hamburger Helper or something, but "Meatloaf again" was just such a brilliant line. But Sal Piro took it to the next evolution. You had, once you move beyond people coming in with the newspapers and the water guns and the cigarette lighters for lights over this.
Was he the one that started the people that used to get up at the front of the theater and act it out?
That's what he started. He's the one that started.
I used to go often when my friend Tara and a bunch of other people. And the thing is that her brother got one. He did a couple of the parts, but he started out as Rocky, and we went in to see him act. So
people would show up dressed as their favorite character, and that led to people going up to the front of the theater. And I don't know how you chose between multiple Frankies and multiple Rockies and multiple Brads, etc. But they would be pantomiming the action on the screen.
It made the time warp even better.
That's okay. As I've mentioned, I don't dance. I think I've mentioned I don't dance. But and now it's about 30 years ago.
But you had to do the time warp.
Well, my sister got married
in 1992, I believe it was. So her 30th would have passed last year. And she got married on Halloween. So they did an Addams Family. Oh, that's interesting. I just really made that connection. An Addams Family themed wedding, but she had me lead the audience in the time warp. So I had to get up.
You can make that connection to a promo for next week.
Upcoming feature, yeah. But Sal Piro also had a cameo in the movie Fame. When the acting school, one of the really bashful girls, they went to see the Rocky Horror Show, and she ended up doing that up front of the theater.
Yeah, and he did a cameo as a man using a payphone in what they call Rocky Horror's pseudo sequel Shock Treatment.
Yes.
And then he wrote 2 books on the cult of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I didn't know there were books out about that.
Yes,
they're called Creatures. But get this, so the title of the 2 books is Creatures of the Night 2.
I had booked as a guest for Thursday, July 5th, 2012, a guy who wrote a book about the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
It's not by Sal Piro?
No, it wasn't. And I was really excited about that guest to be on my show.
Yeah.
My wife died the night before.
Oh my!
So I had to cancel that. I canceled that show, and I never rebooked.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, he also did a number of documentaries, but it didn't say what they were about. But I think they were all on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So he really milked that.
But yeah, I wonder what. Now again, he was 20-something. He would be 26, 27. He was born in 1950. So if it was it 75, 76 that the movie first hit the Waverly?
Right. Well, right.
He was president of the fan club from 1977 until his death. So what was he going to be when he grew up, given he was 27 when he became president of the Rock? That he sidetracked that all. Although I don't know. Maybe he did have it.
There's nothing about a lot of the research.
Okay, he did have jobs. Okay. He was the manager of the Ice Palace and Grove Hotel for 23 years.
Right.
He was the executive producer of the Miss Fire Island pageant and Mr. Fire Island Leather. Okay. So he also had a job. Okay. He did. This was, I don't know if he made a living with this, but he did work.
Right.
That's actually pretty cool then to take something and have it be your passion for your entire life.
It was definitely meant for him. So so that's all I have on
as soon as I saw the name, I knew exactly who it was.
Yeah.
I was stunned in part because it's a big part of my development. It's definitely one of the milestone marks.
The name Susan Sarandon certainly, but I didn't know who Sal Piro was.
Yeah, but no, she's not going to be on the show. She's not going to be on the show for several more months.
I hope not. But but it was interesting to learn about him. It was fun. We move on to Lance Kerwin, and the first thing popped into my head was James at 15.
Yeah. And
it was such a popular show that every year that it was renewed, it became James at 16 and James at 17.
Did it?
But you know what? He was also in a movie called Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
Which was a Halloween type movie. So I thought that's really a good place to move on. He also was in I thought, because the thing is also when I hear the movie actors, the Salem's Lot, I don't think of Lance Kerwin. It made me think of David Soul, because David Soul was in that movie, and he had a song that had something to do with that movie, which I did not read in research. I just remember it. But yeah, it was interesting to find out he was in that. And also I thought was interesting was his parents were in the business.
Yes.
His mother was a booking agent. That's kind of nice for an actor. And his father was an acting coach.
Right.
So that was kind of cool. I also remember there was a movie called The Longest or The Loneliest. It was The Loneliest Runner. And he was in that. And it was based on a true story about an Olympic runner. And what it was, it was about this Olympic runner when he was a teenager. And the thing is, like, he used to like bedwet. And so to get him to stop bedwetting, his mother used to hang his laundry out the window. So he used to run home after school to pull the sheets in before people would walk by his window, so he would not be embarrassed. He eventually one day did not make it home in time, and they of course all teased him. And then by the end of the movie, you see, now I forgot his name. Michael Landon. Michael Landon is sitting like on a late night show as the Olympian, and the question was like a Johnny Carson type thing, and they asked how he became such a great runner. And he just attributed it to his mother. He didn't go into the embarrassing part, but he said, if it wasn't for my mother, I never would have become the runner I am. So that kind of stuck with me.
What I noticed, and I remember Lance Kerwin. I didn't really see James at 15. I don't know that I saw many of them.
Yeah, it was a good show. It was a good show. Yeah.
But I knew the actor and I recognized the name right away. But And this is something we've touched on in the last few weeks. Before that, he had a bunch of one-offs and he was.
Oh yeah, he was in the
Woman and the usual Little House.
He was in
Emergency.
He was in a lot of ABC after school.
Right, so he was working his way up.
He did. Yeah, he did Wonder Woman and all that. But you know what did surprise me? Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say what was really surprising was to find out that, he retired from acting in the 90s. He became a minister.
I don't know.
I'm like, wow.
That's just it. He had one other role, regular role where he was in a number of episodes. Everything else became a bunch of one-offs and guest appearances. He was in Trapper John for looks like a couple of years. Then he did an episode of Murder, She Wrote, and he did a movie of the week kind of thing until 1995. He came back and did one more role just last year in 2022, The Wind and the Reckoning.
Right.
But again, his acting career was relatively brief. Was focused over
pretty
about
much
a 10-year period. And
pretty
then
much, pretty much his teen years. He was very good. But yeah, he became a minister, and
I have to say, and it's not anywhere, and maybe it's my own personal bias. When he became a pastor, and he's a program leader for U-Turn for Christ, a drug and alcohol rehab organization.
Right.
You know what? I noticed this early on in junior high when we started having these rap sessions with, these hip guys to keep us away from drugs and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were all reformed addicts. Almost every drug counselor that I ever met was a former abuser. So I see this guy, and like I said,
I don't, it's nowhere. So I don't see that as his reason for doing that.
That's just the conclusion I jumped to, and I feel a
Okay.
little guilty, but I wouldn't be surprised if it turns
You
out I
should
was
feel
right.
guilty. Yeah,
I
no,
wouldn't be
you're not.
surprised if it turns out I was right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just again another piece of our youth that's disappearing.
Yep. Which brings us to Lisa Loring. You know, it's funny. I did not recognize her name. I do know the name Gloria Loring, who was a soap opera actress, and I wondered if they were related. I didn't see anything that said they were. And you know why? Because her real name is Kwajalein Atoll. She was Hawaiian. Who would have thought?
Although she's most known as Wednesday on the original Addams Family TV show.
Addams
But
Family,
she did do
right.
a couple of years on Search for Tomorrow.
They're creepy and they're kooky, mysterious and spooky. They're all together ooky, the Addams Family. Their house is a museum. When people come to see them, they really are a scream, the Addams Family.
Neat. Sweet. Petite.
So get a witch's shawl on, a broomstick you can crawl on. We're gonna pay a call on the Addams Family.
Yes, and she appeared in shows like Fantasy Island and Barnaby Jones, The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., The Phyllis Diller Show. But here's the surprising thing. As she got older, she married this guy who became intricate in adult films.
Yes.
And she kind of followed him into it. And,
No, she didn't.
Yes, she did.
She did not appear in adult films.
I mentioned no, she didn't appear in the film. She worked within. Right, no, she wasn't on the screen.
Okay, right. She wrote and she was a makeup artist. You're right. That's what she was.
Exactly. She got into the business of that, and so I was like, really?
It was interesting.
I'm glad you helped me. Yeah, I'm glad you helped me clarify that. I didn't mean to
the Addams
make anybody
family
think that she
is enjoying yet
she
another
wasn't like
bit of
she wasn't like the next incarnation of Linda Lovelace.
Right. The Addams family periodically has a rebirth. You know, they came out the movies in the 90s.
Yeah, just like with the Munsters. It was always the Munsters or the Addams family.
No, but the Munsters, I think they did one like in the last 15 years, something based on the Munsters. But the Addams family had a couple of very successful movies in the late 90s or early 2000s, and another one about 10 years later. And now one of the more popular shows, I think it's on Netflix, is a series called Wednesday, focused on her character. And in a lot of ways, Christina Ricci was Wednesday in the movies and was probably the breakout star from that. So in many ways, Wednesday turns out to be among the more popular Addams family characters. I don't think Wednesday on the I don't think Lisa Loring's Wednesday during the TV series was like Michael J. Fox and Family Ties.
No, absolutely not. She was just a weird little girl.
Yeah.
Neither kid really was, all that popular. It was mostly, I would say, Herman and Grandpa, right? Because
that was the monster, Sharon.
Oh wait, you're right. It was the Addams family. It was Gomez.
Morticia.
Carolyn. Oh yeah, my favorite. Actually,
Gomez
you know what?
and Morticia.
Yeah, my favorite characters actually were It and Thing.
now, Uncle Fenster.
Uncle Fester.
He was Addams family.
Yes.
Al Lewis was the Munsters. Was Grandpa in the Munsters? Al Lewis was an uncle of a good family friend of ours. I never met him, but
he had a very good restaurant for a while.
Al Lewis?
I understand. Yeah, he had a restaurant called Grandpa's.
Oh, that could be. was Uncle Fester, but was that like Jackie Coogan or Jackie Cooper? I think it was somebody who'd been a
one of those. One of those
movie star. But yeah, but Lisa Loring, you're right. Now, what struck me as sad, I didn't know who Lisa Loring was till I saw the obituary and tied to the Addams Family. But it struck me as sad. You mentioned her marriage to the porn actor, which finally broke them up.
Yeah.
But
right,
she had been married. That was like her fourth husband. She married her childhood sweetheart when she was 15, had a daughter. The marriage ended a year later. She got married her second husband in 1981. Ended in 83. Married in 87 to Jerry Butler, the porn star. And
it was Jackie Coogan. Jackie
Coogan. That one, okay. That one actually lasted. Her marriage to Jerry Butler, no. That ended in 92.
She was married and divorced 4 times.
The fourth husband, Graham Rich, 2003.
He was the porn guy.
And they separated in 2008 and divorced in 2014.
And that was the end of that.
It just seemed like 5-6 years is as long as she got a marriage to last. And that seems sad to me.
Yeah.
And she died of high blood pressure at 64. Or stroke.
She had a stroke.
Caused by high blood pressure.
Yeah. Yep.
Too young.
So only 64 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So moving on, we move into the world of novelist Paul LaFarge. I've never heard of him. Have you?
Neither. No, nor his books.
All right. Well, apparently he was. I mean, the articles I read said he was a beloved American novelist and he was an essayist and an academic guy. Over 20 years, he published 5 novels. They talked a lot about his first book, I think was called The Facts of Winter. It says it was the Artist of the Missing, and I read a little bit about the reviews on him. So it says reviewers compared the debut work to those of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Jorge Luis Borges, and categorized him among literary wizards. And I'm like,
okay, but let me ask you a question. You haven't heard of Paul LaFarge.
Right.
Did you hear of any of the people he was compared to either?
Actually, yeah, there's one I heard of.
Okay.
But not that I've read any of their books. It's just like the name. I know the name.
Right.
I don't know who Gabriel Garcia Marquez was, but
anything,
I had heard of
anything else of LaFarge?
No, just I have a little quote. It said because it's from the New York Times, and I know you're a New York Times guy. It says in his review for the New York Times, Edmund White called it imaginative, indeed a hallucinatory approach, one that ends up by transforming his supremely practical subject into an elegant and sometimes grotesque fairy tale hero.
Okay.
That was intriguing to me. So that's all I have on him. So
all right.
Kind of fits in with the gruesomeness of our other 2 honorees. We move into the music.
You'll love Dean Daughtry. Because his first
Dean Daughtry, 76 years old.
Was called Spooky.
Yep. Dean Daughtry was 76 years old, widely known as a keyboardist. That's what I thought of. I did not know he had. I mean, I know the Atlanta Rythym Section, but he was with. Well, it said he started playing the piano when he was 5, and then he caught on to the music scene while being a keyboardist with a group called it was like a barbershop type
Barbershop Quartet.
Quartet kind of thing, and they were the backup for the Roy Orbison band.
Okay.
So that's sort of so he kind of got in that way, like backing up for Roy Orbison. Then in 1971, he co-founded the Atlanta Rythym Section, which I'm very well aware of. But he was apparently with other bands. It said something about, the Candymen. That's what they were called. That group was called the Candymen, that I'd never heard of. But Barbershop is pretty cool stuff.
But the Atlanta Rythym Section, he was their
keyboardist
from 2020.
And everybody else is a guitarist, so the way he comes in with the keyboard is instrumental to their sound. Their first self-titled album in January 1972 didn't do very well. They released 2 more that didn't do very well. And then in 1976, they hit it big. And they hit it big with, I love these songs, so I hope you put them in. They had big hits called So Into You.
When you walked into the room, there was voodoo in the lights. I was captured by your style, but I could not catch your eyes. Now I stand here helplessly, hoping you'll get into me. I am so into you, I can't think of nothing else. I am so into you, I can't think of nothing else. Thinking how it's gonna be whenever I get you next to me.
And another one called Imaginary Lover.
Pick one.
Both of those songs are great. So
I'll
I don't care
one.
which one you pick.
Pick one.
Yeah. Oh, Imaginary Lover. That was a great song.
Okay.
Imaginary lovers never turn you down. When all the others turn you away, they're around. It's my private pleasure, midnight fantasy, someone to share my wildest dreams with me. Imaginary lover, you're mine anytime. Imaginary lover, oh yeah.
Consider it done.
So yeah, and you know what? And I did not know, but he co-wrote both of those songs. I didn't know that he did that. But like you say, and the other thing that they mentioned several times into all 3 articles that I read said that he was the only consistent member. Like the members of the band changed throughout the years. He was the only consistent one. It stayed there until, as you mentioned, that he finally retired in 2020. So, so he was the constant, that's pretty admirable. That leads us into, now I'm very aware of who the Yardbirds were,
right?
But I had no idea when I saw the name Anthony Topham who that was until I looked at the research, and I was like, that's a hard one. He was 75 years old and had been battling dementia. And I think that's a disease that's harder on the people around you than it is on the person. Because when somebody you love looks at you and you don't know who they are, like, that just is so hurtful.
I've had some considerable exposure, and it's sad. In some ways, it's not as sad as the woman who I was involved with. She knew her son almost all the time, although sometimes she thought of him as her late husband, his dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and her reality was often altered, but she almost always not only knew her son, but they had certain gestures that were, you know, like just unique to them that always knew. And even within her reality, she had pleasure. She had pleasure. I mean, I still love the way her eyes lit up when she would have her ice cream after lunch. I love the way she'd get excited to see, oh, the newspaper's here. And then a half hour later, she could go, oh, the newspaper's here, and get excited all over again.
Kind of like Daughtry, right?
Yeah, so there were things, even in her impacted reality, there were pleasures and happiness and joys of life. That's all I can say. So yes, dementia can be when you lose somebody and they're still living and you've lost them. That's sad.
Yeah, but he was quite talented when he was 15 years old. He co-founded the group the Yardbirds. I used to get the Yardbirds requests for their songs quite often when I was DJing.
Here's to me in a way the sad part in reading about him, because this is how it's described. He was the first lead guitarist for the Yardbirds. And then he was followed by the next three lead guitarists went on to become superstars. Eric Clapton, who we talked about last week. Jeff Beck, who we talked about because he passed recently.
Right.
And Jimmy Page. So those are the next three people who had his job.
I know.
And they became superstars. And
the thing is that
the reason he
best. Yeah, but the thing is that the reason he quit was because his parents were afraid that he wouldn't finish high school, so they made him quit to finish high school. Now he went on. It says that he went on to become a successful session musician. It's been a while since we've talked about that. You know, in the beginnings of our shows, we talked about a lot of musicians who ended up being like session musicians. So it kind of brings us back to the first year of our podcast. He worked as a musician, working with members of Fleetwood Mac, including Peter Green and Christy McVie and Mark Bolan, and then a lot more. And then during the 70s, he joined. Now this I didn't ever hear of. Maybe you have. He joined the Sub-Bud spiritual movement. I have no idea what that is. It's probably something Muslim because it says he changed his name to Sanderson Rashid. And then he later reconvened with McCarty to form the Topham McCarty Band, which I also never heard of. So I thought that was interesting. I don't have much more on him.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add?
I do not.
All right, that leads us to Tom Verlaine, whose real name is actually Thomas Miller. He was 73. I have never heard of him. But again, the research, there's not a lot here, but it was interesting, and I may go look him up. I listened to one song. I went and listened to one song, and here's why. So he's a founding member of a seminal New York punk band called Television. So I'm a Television girl. And I'm not really so much, I'm more into funk than punk. But he began studying
knew the band
piano.
Television?
Huh?
You knew the band
television?
No, but
Oh.
but I'm a television person, so the fact that the band was called Television is interesting to me. I'm we're the television age, and even at this point, I live alone. Television is usually on 24/7. It's really rare I turn it off. So he began studying piano at a very early age, but fell in love with the saxophone after hearing a record by Stan Getz. Now, you know that I like jazz, right? I love jazz. I love the blues. So Stan Getz is like, that's an ear perker for me. He also worked with John Coltrane, and he worked with Albert Ayler, and they inspired him to pick up the sax.
I remember how the darkness doubled. I recall lightning struck itself. I was listening to the rain.
How's that for a change of pace?
All right. So that was jazz sax that he was playing. So I love that. So it inspired him to fall in love, with the sax, and then those are the reasons why I love the sax.
By the way,
as well.
it's interesting that you found inspiration, or related to by his band name being Television, because that wasn't his first band. His first band, which did not last very long, was called Hell. And
I kind of bypassed that.
If that had inspired you the same way, we'd be having an entirely different conversation.
Oh, absolutely. That wouldn't have been inspirational to me at all.
I don't know him. I don't know the band.
I did listen to one of their songs. So it says here that he picked up the guitar after listening to the Rolling Stones, and the song that he was inspired by was called The 19th Nervous Breakdown. How about that?
He did. I mean,
it also,
if you judge somebody by the company he keeps, he auditioned and played with people like Dee Dee Ramone, Chris Stein from Blondie. He played frequently at Max's Kansas City and CBGB's.
Right.
So that establishes his bona fide.
I used to go to that club. I might have actually seen him play there. It also says I learned he was a poet. So when you find out a songwriter is a poet, that's a very good avenue, because very often lyrics that are music that's set to poetry becomes a song. So I thought that was pretty cool. It says he released 2 albums called Marquee Moon and Adventure to great critical acclaim and modest sales before breaking up in July 1978. He released his first new album in many years in 2006, titled Songs and Other Things in the 2010s, and then he kept on touring with Television, performing Marquee Moon in its entirety.
I remember how the darkness doubled. I recall lightning struck itself. I was listening to the rain.
So I guess if you want to, you can go look at Marquee Moon.
He played on Patti Smith's Glitter in the Eyes and Horses.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, there was some good people.
Yeah.
There were some very good people that he played with. Just he probably was overlooked because of the people he played with.
Well, again, yeah. But
so
he did what he wanted to do. He lived his life.
So last week we did a little expose on a restaurant that was close to your heart. And this week we're moving to New Jersey, where there was an iconic bakery called Baum's Bakery. brand, and they are closing after 43 years in business. That's more than 4 decades. And it's said that it was very popular for its bread. So I'm glad I didn't live near him, because I am heavy enough, and bread is my thing. Like, you can keep your cake and everything else, and I love good bread.
Here's the part. Here's the part that kind of bothers me. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you did this calculation, but you say 43 years. This makes it sound like the bakery was around a long time, right?
Yes. Yes.
That means it opened in 1980.
I know. I know.
We were adults
I know.
when it opened.
Yeah.
Not like it's from our childhood.
I know it's not heading toward our youth, really.
Now,
but yeah,
I don't.
It
I was
says
talking
it
about this, and I don't know if it was on the show or not. I don't think it was, because I can't think of what it would have related to. But when I think of bakeries, and I think of bakeries when I was growing up, and you would have the same memory. What I remember,
Entenmann's.
but what I remember about going to the bakery with my dad is the spider web of strings coming down from the ceiling, from these dispensers in the ceiling, so they would fill the box with
wrap up the boxes,
and then they would boom, boom, and it would take them a second and a half to tie this Houdini-esque knot.
Yeah,
but like their fingers were so fast to tie this knot, and and
then they would cut it, and then they would cut it from
and that was such an integral part of my childhood. One of those things that I assumed I would relive as an adult. And I don't know if that still exists even in Brooklyn anymore. I haven't seen it.
I mean, I think if there's an Italian bakery not far from my last, not quite that was my last place that I lived before my mom passed. There was an Italian bakery, which I think is still there. They do that. They do that. Yeah.
I missed that.
But and last I knew, they was still there. But the bakery offered baguettes and focaccia and other Italian baked classics like spazzoletta and Easter bread. It was heralded as the go-to spot for Italian bread in the Garden State. And the legendary singer and fellow Hoboken native Frank Sinatra used to go there. So that's high accolades, right? So I think we had a couple of mentions.
Well,
do you have
more
a
than
mention?
a mention, we have Gwen Knapp, who was a sports writer, and she wrote for Philadelphia Inquirer and the New York Times. But the bulk of her career, where I know her from, is I think since the 90s, she wrote for the San Francisco newspapers, first the Examiner and then the Chronicle. And she was a very, very good sports writer and was part of that generation that bridged the gap between, a female sports writer, just a sports writer. There was a time where you had your token woman, whether it was in the broadcast, and she's pretty good for a woman type of thing.
Right.
Was one of the leading waves, and now it's relatively common, of female sports writers who just had the moniker sports writer. I still remember one of the earliest fights involved the Jets. When women wanted to be able to go in the locker room, just like because you can't get the same stories if you don't have the same accent.
Yeah, I know the story of Ruth Walden, her first time in the locker room, so I get it.
Of who was that?
Ruth Wolf. I'm sorry, my voice is going. Ruth, I think her name is Ruth Walden.
Who was the Jets had a lineman who's married to the tall blonde from Rocky IV, Mark something.
I don't know.
I think Joe Klecko. They had a very good, very well established front line or something like that. And this one of these early female
sports journalist, got the right to go to the locker room, and he stood in front of her and dropped his towel and said, "There, you happy? Is this what you wanted to see?" And she just sat there, looked up at him, and said, looks like a penis, only smaller."
Oh, my God.
Great line. Great line. So I guarantee you that that's in the Google machine. But Gwen Knapp.
Yeah, no, I was trying to spit out Susan Waldman.
Okay. Okay.
My voice kind of left me.
But she covered all sports and really was a very, very, very good writer. Was actually one of the top writers focusing on the whole steroids and all that doping in baseball.
So she covered like all sports or just
Yeah.
She didn't have like one particular team. Okay.
No. Well, so, I mean, during the season, she was writing for the San Francisco papers, so but she covered the Giants and the A's and.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's not fair. California has 5 teams, so
Yeah. We have two Northern California teams, 3 Southern California teams. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that I think about brings us to the end of. Unless you want to do promos first.
Next week, we already unfortunately have a pretty lengthy list of dinners, and certainly, I don't know whether she was Schlemiel or Schlemazel, but that's definitely someone that I know all our listeners already know who I'm talking about.
There's another dance you can handle besides. There's another dance you can handle besides the time warp.
And a legend in the world of hockey has passed, and that's just our features for Over the Rainbow next week.
That's exciting. Good lead-in. So it about wraps up another edition of Over the Rainbow. Just what this whole show means is that you should show your love for those you care for today, because you never know what will happen tomorrow or what tomorrow would bring.
Thank
you, Mark Silverman.
Another one bites the dust.
Until our next episode.
Okay.
Another one bites the dust. And another one gone. And another one gone. Another one bites the dust. Hey, I'm gonna get you too. Another one bites the dust.